Steph, you can, oh, thank you. Steph, if you can let people in as we go.
Yep, sure.
Uh, Welcome everyone to our HL7 Australia AE Core Work Group main call for today, a Tuesday, the 2nd of June. This is a rescheduled call from last Thursday because we had a conflict with the Sparked community co-design workshops. So we rescheduled this one to Tuesday. I'm going to kick off with the acknowledgement of country. HL7 Australia acknowledges and pays respect to the past, present, and future traditional custodians and elders of Australia and the continuation of cultural, spiritual, and educational practices of the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. So the agenda for today, the main reason we rescheduled this call is because we have some more proposals we're trying to get into AE Core R3. So the two main focuses for today are looking at AE Core endpoint. Stuart's going to take us through. And then we're just finishing off document reference. We've had a number of those go through meetings before. It's just a couple of things left to finish off on that one. So we'll spend as much time as we need on endpoint, and then whatever remaining time on the document, we're finishing off the document reference proposal. Jumping into usual business. Approval of minutes. Now, Andrew sent out about a week ago the minutes of the last two meetings. So we'd carried over. We didn't do any approvals in the last meeting. So we've got two meeting minutes to approve today, if we're comfortable with that. So I will jump over to those. So we have from the 30th of April, that in the chat. And we also have the 14th of May minutes there. So they'll both sent out about a week ago. So on the 30th, the agenda there, we're doing AE Core composition and diagnostic report. We didn't get to document reference on that one. That's got pushed forward. So we've got our recording, we've got the slides, and we've got all of the minutes here. There's quite a lot of detailed minutes in these ones with our motions and some of the screenshots out of the slides as we went through it. And yeah, quite a lot there that we had. So it was a pretty big meeting. Then on the 14th, again, this one was we did the AE Core organization. We relaxed the constraint on identifiers in that one. We also finished off diagnostic report. Again, we didn't get to document reference. That one got bumped, but we got through the other two. And again, we've got the recording, the slides, and a full set of detailed minutes with the decisions recorded in there. So has everyone had enough time to have a look at those? Does anyone have any other changes or anything, or would like more time to review either of those? Otherwise, I'm happy to accept a motion for either approving these individually or together, if we'd like to do that. I'll open the floor if anyone's happy to accept those.
Sure, I'll pass a motion that these minutes be accepted times two.
Great.
David McKillop.
Thanks, David. Do we have a second for that motion?
I'm happy to second, Landon Riley.
Great. Thanks, Landon. There's no other questions or comments. I'll launch a poll.
I'd like to comment that somebody did a wonderful job of taking so many minutes. Congratulations to whoever managed to get all that down.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was Olivia who did those, but yes, they're quite detailed, which is really good. And Shelley's got the wonderful job of doing the ones from the workshop we held last week, which is even bigger job. Sorry, I'm just still trying to find the motion. I've lost it here.
Oh, good, because I was about to say I can't see the poll.
No, I'm just trying to find it though. Oh, here we go. There's a whole heap of extra meeting polls in here that weren't there before. I will launch this one. Launch. Hopefully you can see it now. So this is to approve both minutes from the previous two meetings. If you can't see the poll or isn't working for you, you can either vote in the chat or you can also call out your name and your motion will accept it that way as well. We've had about 70% of people. If we can just get that number up, you can abstain if you weren't at a meeting or don't feel like comfortable voting. Okay, so we've got there. I'll end that in 3, 2, 1. And we have 9 affirmative, we have 0 negative, and we have 11 plus 1 in the chat, 12 abstain. So that motion has passed. Thank you, everyone. Just some action items. I think there was a number of action items that were raised in the meeting on the 14th of May. I'm not sure that we've got Corey or Angus in this meeting. I can't say okay with you. So we'll just leave this there. But they're basically actions on them. They're not actions on us as a group. But I think there was one there for Corey to raise a ticket on AE that we were discussing with diagnostic report. And Angus raised a few issues that we didn't address in the meetings, and the opportunity for him to want to raise some issues or ask requests for those to be an agenda item for a future meeting. So they're there if they want to action those.
I just check because it says AU work group meeting on the one from Angus. Is that core or is that
Yeah, it is
5?
core. I just copied that directly
Okay.
from the minutes, but it is core. They were raised in core
We should.
meetings.
Can we get that when we probably just need to do an editorial fix then on the minutes too, because
Yep.
yeah.
Yep. Do that. Well, sorry, jumped backwards and forwards. We won't go through too much on this. We'll do it at the end of the meeting, just talking about what we're looking forward as far as meetings. But today is our makeup meeting because we postponed it last Thursday. We're going through endpoint and document reference. An information session on Friday for medication dispense, which is part 2 of that. We'll look at bringing medication dispense through in the next call, as well as just looking at some address changes that I think we've been they're low priority. We've just been deferring those until there was a suitable time. But we are getting very close to sort of finalising R3 for AU Core. So we really want to, if anyone's got any other changes they want to bring forward, we want to sort of capture that and try and get them on a meeting agenda for one of the next 2 meetings. One of those that has been raised has been AU Core Bundle, which Heath is going to look to have an info session on the 19th of June and have that in the following meeting. But to have a think, if there's anything else you want to get on the agenda for R3, but we'll come back to this at the end of the meeting. So you've got a chance to have a bit of think if there's anything else that we want to put in this. Last week, we had the Sparked Encounter Record Discovery Workshop, which we held in Brisbane on the 28th of May last week. So I'm just going to give a really quick rundown of this, what we did. It was all about Encounter Record. It was a discovery workshop, so we don't have a project for Encounter Record yet. It was really just pre-project work to sort of do discovery about what this thing is and what we might need. And this is a bit of a history of the timeline of the origins of Encounter Record. So this was way back in 2023 where AUCDI was looking at the reason for Encounter. It's been through a number of clinical design groups and focus groups between then and now, where it sort of evolved from a reason to encounter to an encounter summary to an encounter record. And then they've been developing a number of patient journeys to go along with that. And then we had the technical group was our first opportunity to sort of see it and discuss it was in February this year, where we had Sparked Community Co-Design workshops in Hobart. And we spent a day there talking about Encounter Record and what that might mean for us in the technical group. The The clinical design group has still been continuing to evolve patient journeys on that. They're still working on refining their definitions and encounter journeys and the like. But then last week we had another round Spark Community Co-Design workshops, which were in Brisbane. And we spent a day there again, just discovery. We weren't making decisions. We we're just trying to understand and sort of get a common understanding about the encounter record. And looking to the future about potentially having a new Fire IG project for this encounter record. So the clinical design group has a draft definition for an encounter record. What that is, that it's a record of an individual's interaction or set of interactions with the healthcare system. Rather than a complete patient record, it's information recorded from an encounter, which reflects and supports care. Encounter record information can be used to generate patient summary, as well as support reuse of data, for example, forms, referrals, CDS, population health, etc. AU Encounter Record will support the consumer and their healthcare providers with timely and current access to relevant encounter-specific information to enable effective coordination of care. A lot of words there. There's also Carl-Ian's hamburger diagram, as it's commonly known now, there on the left, talking about the role of encounter records and AU encounter records and patient summaries and the like. But what we did as part of our workshop in Brisbane was kind of trying to refine that and what that means to us in technical. Oh, Richard, sorry, you got a question? Yep.
Yeah, I'm just thinking encounter record makes me think of it's a record of a single encounter. And another thing that would be common would be somebody wanting to have a history of what happens over several encounters. Is the sort of thinking that would be a collection of encounter records, one for last
Yes.
Monday, one for this Tuesday, one for next Wednesday. Is that the sort of path that people are thinking, or is that
Yeah.
an area people haven't really explored yet?
It does say here, an encounter record is a record of an individual's interaction or set of interactions with the healthcare system. So yes, but I see, Danielle, you've got your hand up as well. You want to answer that?
I have, because that's something that I hear really frequently, like across multiple jurisdictions. Encounter record is just the one. And there are some use cases for, I just want to know what happened in this particular encounter. But the history of encounters one, including also a summary of information across the set of encounters, is something that I'm seeing being solved with patient summary. And in particular, like if we look at US PCS, and there's another jurisdiction, and they're escaping me at the moment, who have done a history of encounters section. They've added that to patient summary, with I think that also then flows through to some of what the My Health Record's done in their views. If then you could like click off if you wanted to like find to follow up and go, well, I want to know more about that particular encounter. So that's what I'm seeing happening, and I think I'm probably expecting like a history of encounters to come into patient summary R2.
That seems quite plausible to me. I just sort of found myself thinking, the statement here could lead some people to think, oh, this is a record about encounters rather than a record about a single encounter, and that people may not get confused on that, but I think we'll want to be careful going forward that we don't get people who haven't been on the journey thinking, oh, this is the encounter, this is stuff that better belongs in patient summary.
And I think that's really important feedback. Is there, if you have the time, could you, I guess, like have a look at the wording we've got on this slide, and if you've got a suggestion, then that would be great. If you've got like it might actually be clearer if we use these words. That would be fabulous.
Yeah, I think, sorry to interject here, I don't have the ability to raise hands. Richard, I think there are two concepts that needs to be considered when we are developing this encounter record. One is the concept of episode of care, and both from the fire perspective and also from the chronic disease management perspective, the concept of episode is an umbrella concept, as you and many others know, that encompasses sort of multiple encounters. I hear what you're saying in terms of the possibility of confusion between encounters and encounter itself, where we'll say that if you have multiple encounters, then each one of them would generate an encounter record, which can be tied together under the concept of episode of care for a sort of a long period of time in the chronic disease management. And also in the acute care sector, you also have the concept of sort of episodes of care where you can have multiple in-hospital encounters that tie together. So I do acknowledge that those concepts hadn't been especially the relationship between episode of care and also encounter hadn't been sort of explored in any big details, which I think would need to be considered. And then there is the need to distinguish between sort of what actually is an encounter record versus in the in-hospital care and also within the EMR itself, the concept of progress note and the concept of consultation notes. So they can create a fair bit of confusion, sort of an overlapping scope in this with this concept of encounter record.
Yeah, I think like the stage we're at the moment is like this is all discovery work, and these are all valid questions and things we need to work through when we look to turn this into a project when we scope it. So, like this definition is a draft definition out of the clinical design group. There's ability for us to provide feedback and direct it, but that was the actual point of this discovery workshop. We're asking all these sorts of questions about what this thing is, what does it mean to us, and the like. So very early days, but they're all good questions. And if you do have direct feedback, you can provide that back to us and the clinical focus group or the clinical design group, because like I said, these are all draft, so they're still being refined. But from our group's point of view, there were some definitions that came out of the clinical group. And it's interesting there's a typo on that. We've got fire, but the key thing here was that there's encounter information that would flow into the patient record in the clinical information system. And that might be things like information being keyed into the system. It might be AI scribe generated information. It might be wearables, device information, all these kinds of things that sort of populate the patient record and the counter record within the clinical information system. From our point of view, from the technical group's point of view, we're looking at this AU encounter record. So this is for exchange. This is where FHIR comes in. And out of that clinical information system, you would generate one of these AU encounter records for sharing, for information exchange. So that's what's trying to sort of narrow down our focus of where we're looking at this. The clinical group's looking broader than that as well, but we were focused on that sort of AU encounter record being that exchangeable thing, living with other IGs that we have for other things like patient summary and eCall FHIR IGs and the like. Like I said, this was very much a discovery workshop. It wasn't about decision making. It was just about trying to understand more about encounter records. So the objectives of the day were basically building that shared understanding of what an AU encounter record, the AU encounter record definitions, and identify the primary use cases. We had a panel where we were trying to gain industry insights on AI scribes and the structured import of encounter information. We explored encounter record content requirements and potential mappings to FHIR. And then we kind of looked at the exchange approaches about the document exchange or whether we're doing a resource-based exchange patterns and the like. So there was a number of really good discussions there. Shelley is madly working through the minutes of that. It's a huge job for her to go through all those discussions and create some minutes out of it. But the minutes will be available soon. It'll be where our normal meeting minutes are. There's a QR code and a link to that. So we'll have the minutes, the slides, the Menti results, all of that there. It still is being developed, but it will be finalized shortly with all that detail there. So if you have an interest, definitely go have a look. It wasn't recorded, but we will have a good set of minutes there and all the slides as well and worksheets. And then finally, like we said, this was sort of pre-work to a project. So we'll be looking at releasing an expression of interest in the near future to see whether there's interest in the community in working on a project to support Encounter Records in fire. So keep an eye out for that. And if you have an interest in this space, we'd love you to participate. Might just in the name of time, because we do have a fairly big topic here as we get into the AU Core Fire IG project, we're going to move into endpoint. And Stuart, hopefully I've got you on the line to run through this.
All right. Thank you, Michael.
Do you want to share?
Oh, yeah, I certainly will. One sec.
Stop.
There we go. Hopefully that worked.
Yep. Yep, we can see your slides.
Lovely. Thank you. All right. Welcome back, everyone. I apologize in advance. I've got some god-awful sickness, so I will do my best to work through this as comprehensively as possible. We've been through this a few times with the core working group, but there have been some changes from base. So I just want to raise a few things again before we put this forward for anything. So the proposal is still the same. The proposal is that we are looking to put endpoint in AU Core R3 for backwards compatibility with SMD, maintaining compatibility with NHSD and HCPD as well. And then essentially set up a bare bones profile for what endpoint could look like now and in the future. We can do sort of further work on that as we go forward. So at the moment, we've taken this to core a number of times for feedback. We've also taken this to the fire working group for AU base as well. And AU base are the ones where a lot of the changes have been recommended over the last couple of weeks. That's what we're just going to bring to the attention of core community today. So I don't know if anybody remembers what this looked like last time, but it's a lot different now. It's a bit more of a stripped back version. So we've only got the one slice in there now. We have the status, the connection type, payload type, and the address in there as well. We have pulled a lot of the terminology bindings. They're going to be a separate discussion at AU base working group or AU fire working group on the 19th, which Sam Turner will be taking over there to have a discussion about, because there needs to be some changes to locations of bindings and terminology value sets that are currently sitting in other IGs that need to be pulled back into AU base. Now that was proposed and approved by the AU fire working group, so there is a draft AU base endpoint profile sitting in GitHub pull request waiting for review now. So that is happening, and that's gone through, that's been approved. So when it comes to AU Core, we've taken the feedback from AU Base and the structure that they've recommended and proposed, and we've put that forward for AU Core with the constraints and must supports exactly as you'd expect for AU Core. So we're back to the single slice now of environment type, which is 0 to many. We have our status, connection type, the name, payload type, and address. And then we will have a look at the terminology again in the future after base fire working group has their discussion around what they think that will look like, where that needs to come from, and how that needs to be incorporated back into base. So this is the current state that we have for AU Core endpoint. I do have live versions of these as well if anybody needs to see those. These are just some slide snapshots and things like that. This is the terminology that I keep referencing while I talk about things. So there are a number of terminology value sets that are in other IGs at the moment. Predominantly AUPD, I believe, has the majority of those value sets. And there'll be a couple of conversations with base as to where those end up, if they're pulled back from AUPD into base, or if they end up somewhere else and CTS, whatever it is that they need to do with them, or if they're going to be embedded directly in those IGs. So that's a separate conversation. So that's sort of where we're at the moment when it comes to AU Core. It's a bit of a faster presentation than usual, but this is essentially the end state of where we are at the moment. So I'm happy to take any questions on those. I'm having a really hard time seeing chat, so if there are any questions, please just call them out for me. I've only got one working screen today, so I apologize.
So can I just confirm? So from AU base endpoint, the only change to AU base that was proposed is the extension for environment type?
Correct. Yes, that's what
Okay.
we've got.
Okay. Yes, so no, sorry, I've been away at the HL7 international meeting,
That's okay.
so I just wanted to make sure I understood when I read through the minutes that that's what we were. Okay, so then AU core
Yep.
would derive off that. And can you just go back to the AU core structure? Okay. Well, this is a bit interesting. I'm a little bit unclear on the cardinality changes because I can't. So I usually like look at the diff and so there's grayed out bits. So have we like again, apologies, I've come back from international meetings, so I'm not quite as up to date as I should be. Just a quick bit, like what are the changes in cardinality that are being proposed?
There's not really a whole lot of changes in the cardinality between the two. They should all match 1-to-1. The only one that doesn't show up in base here is name. So name will come through as 0 to 1. All the others should match in terms of cardinality, I believe. I don't think we constrain them any further.
Can you
Okay,
show
so
the diff tab can you show the
That's what
differential
I'm thinking.
tab as opposed to
Might get
key
easier.
elements tab?
That's what I'm thinking. One sec. There we go. Does that help?
it does. So, well, actually, no, that looks weird. Like, were originally multiple statuses allowed and we're constraining it to just one and one only? Because that, like, upper bound looks grayed out to me.
That one will be, yeah.
Let me just pick up, hang on, I'm just going to open the endpoint resource
Stuart, you did
in
have a
my,
comparison on your Confluence page. Is
There is
that
the
up to
comparison.
date?
Yeah. It is, yeah. Let me show you guys that as well. This AI thing kills me.
Yeah, the differential is a bit misleading because in endpoint, status and connection type and payload type have minimum cardinalities of 1 without doing any constraining.
mm,
Your
We
proposal
have some
for your
issues deriving properly because this is the staging server internally here. It does have some issues picking up non-published file packages, so it's most likely related to that. This is the comparison table. Let me just pull up our.
yeah, that has no change from what I can tell to
They should be consistent across the
cardinality.
board. Yeah.
okay, so we're not proposing any cardinality changes.
We shouldn't be, no.
Okay. And we're not proposing any terminology changes?
No, we're going to remove the bindings that we did have in AU base, and that will become a separate discussion as to what happens with that. So we're not going to bind it to any particular terminology at this time.
But payload type here has a binding to Australian endpoint payload type. But that's in AU base.
That's in AU base, yeah.
But in AU base, I presume it's preferred, and here it's extensible.
I
It's
believe
not
that is the case, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not agreed. Because there is no AU-based profile today.
No, it's still sitting as
Yeah,
draft PR,
yeah,
isn't it? Yeah.
yeah.
So
So,
can you just
oh,
give me a quick rundown, I guess, of like what the changes are? So I like if okay, so I think I understood that the only proposed change to AU base was there would be an optional extension, and it looks like a pre-adoption from R5.
Yeah,
That's correct. Yeah,
Um,
it's
correct.
the cross version.
Yep. Okay, no worries. And so then we would pick that up in AU Core because we would derive off AU base. So then what other changes are we looking to agree on? If there's zero cardinality changes, like what are the changes?
Because of the new base structure, there's
Can
not
you
really any changes other than the obligations.
Okay, so it is just calling
Yep.
out a minimum set of must supports with an
That's essentially
associated
all we've
set of
got that down.
obligations. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think we had a couple of other changes, but because of the new structure, I think it's just calling out the obligations now. I don't think there's any cardinality changes. There's no new profiles or extensions or anything like that. So it'll just be those minimum obligations count.
Okay. No, thank you. I think I now understand what the proposed scope of change is for AU Core. So I'll let other people talk instead of like, monopolizing.
can you show the differential for the the proposed AU base version?
Sure can. There you go.
Okay. So this one is not introducing new terminology. This is simply introducing the extension.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Now, I presume that the idea would be that those value sets that the Australian value sets will make their way into AU base instead of having their first appearance in AU core. Is that
That's
right?
what we know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Because they're currently derived from, I think it's the AU EDIG, which isn't really fit for purpose. So we're going to strip the bindings and have a discussion to bring those back.
Thank you.
okay. Are there any other questions here? Stuart, are you looking to make a motion today to
I would love to make a
bring this
motion
in?
for that.
Well,
Okay.
can we
Uh,
also check against, could you just do the quick run through against, I guess we put out the Zulip poll, like what have people implemented? And I guess maybe I want to, because I think we've done the information sessions. Um, is this consistently what people are using? And how do you think that that would flow onto PD? Provider directory, sorry, provider directory.
We believe that this is in line with what people are saying on the feedback that we have here for endpoint implementations currently on Zulip. The PD guys, provider directory guys, don't see any major impacts to their workflow and the way that they're implementing endpoint at the moment. And then we will revisit AUPD, of course, to make sure that everything is derived properly. And if there's any changes that need to be made there, we'll flag those with the relevant communities that need to be notified. But I'll just scroll through this slowly so everyone can sort of see what we're looking at. But yeah, no major concerns from anyone. There's been no breaking feedback on Confluence or Zulip for anybody saying, well, we'll back up. We don't like this either.
Okay, thank you for running through that for me.
No problem. Just flip back
Address,
here so everyone can see.
payload, that's, hang on, the mandatory list of items, that's status, connection type, payload type, and address. And then name is optional or, yep, name is optional. Okay, yep, okay, yep, I'm happy with that.
Cool.
So can we also, what are the value sets for payload type? Or are we not voting on that yet?
We're not voting on the value sets. That'll be a separate discussion for base, and then we'll bring that back over here.
Okay. So what is the motion?
The motion is to accept a draft endpoint profile derived from the accepted AU base profile without terminology, which is essentially this profile set here.
Anyhow,
We rephrase that because I think the only changes are must support. So I think the change is actually that we, as part of AU core endpoint, put must support on status, connection type, name, payload type, and address.
Okay, sure, happy with that. Yep.
so I'll just make sure I understand here. So we're looking at bringing a new draft AE core endpoint profile in with must support on status, connection type, name, payload, and address. And with the obligations, you've got some obligations there: populative known for responder and no error for rougher request. Actually, they both
Yeah,
say
with the obligations, and there is the optional extension of environment type as well.
Yep. I think just looking at
Yeah, that's an
those
error.
obligations, yeah, the no error
Yeah,
should be on
should
the
be a requester.
requester.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Um,
So
but
is
just to
that
clarify,
friendly amendment then, because you can't make it, but I can, a friendly amendment that we are putting must support on endpoint status, connection type, name, payload type, and address, and we're using the default AU core obligations.
Yes.
yep, I think that's clear.
And just to confirm that those 4 elements are mandatory.
They are in the underlying endpoint like the underlying endpoint resource. There are no cardinality changes. I checked. This is just the fire resource cardinality.
No cardinality changes, just must supports and obligations.
Yep.
Okay. If we're clear on that motion, is someone interested in seconding?
Name. Oh, sorry. Oh, scrap that. I made my mistake.
Yeah. Is anyone interested in seconding that motion? No one else wants endpoint? What?
I'll second the motion to use the standard must support on those 5 data elements.
Okay. We have a motion. We have a second. Are there any other comments or questions before we launch a vote on that? No? All right. I will launch a vote. Once I find my screen. Great. Hopefully you'll see a motion to accept that motion of adding must support and obligations with a new AE core endpoint profile. If you can't vote, you can do it in the chat or you can call out your name. Also accept those. Should we get a few more voting? You can vote abstain if you're unsure. It'd be good to get as many people as possible voting. All right. Yep, got up a reasonable number now. So I'll end that motion, that vote in 3, 2, 1. And that poll and share the results. So we have 15 plus 1 in the chat, 16 affirmative, we have 0 negative, and we have 10 abstain. So that motion has passed.
Wonderful. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Stuart. So for you, Stuart, for endpoint now, you're not expecting to bring anything else back through core. The next bit of work is getting some changes made in base.
Correct. Yeah, we'll take terminology and discussions over to base, and then
Yep.
if there is anything that needs to be flagged with core that's raised from base, we will of course come back to you guys.
Okay.
Yeah, can we just make sure that we keep that consistent? So if any normative changes are made in base that would impact this profile, then we do an update and allow for discussion in the core work group around it.
Absolutely, no problem.
Great. Okay, the next agenda item is finalising the AU core document reference proposal. Heath, are you okay to go through that? Do you want to share your screen if you are?
Yes. Okay. So bear with me. It's been a while since I was dealing with this before I was away, so I'm having to recall a whole heap of stuff. But basically,
Hang on, Heath, is it just me or can others not see the screen?
I can't see it either. It says
No.
Heath Franklin has started screen sharing, but I just got that message.
Yeah, that's all I
I
can
can't
see as
actually
well.
see it. Mm.
what about now? I may be having some internet problems. Can you hear me okay?
Can hear you fine.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're
Do you
not
want
lagging.
Oh, there
Oh,
we go.
yes,
We
there
can
it
see it
is.
now. Oh,
Oh no,
it
it's
was
gone
there
away.
and then it went away.
I stopped sharing. Oh, what about now?
No. Whatever you did the second time when you went to stop, it showed up.
Heath, the other day I had a screen sharing problem, which I managed to solve by sharing a window instead of a screen. So that might solve your problem.
Yes,
I can see it now. It says AU Core Document Reference Profile, and there's like some ticks and checkboxes.
Sounds like there's a real lag.
Yeah, you might have to like, this will be interesting because I think we can hear you real time, but I think the slides are maybe 5 second delay or more. So try to manage that, I guess. Have a go.
Well,
Do you see,
but we can definitely
do you
see
see
it
the
now.
orange screen now?
Yep.
Yes.
AU Core
Yep.
Document Reference Proposal.
Awesome. What about now?
Same. We'll tell you when we see something different.
Okay. All right. Bad lag. I might try your.
Do you want me to
I don't know
share,
how
Heath?
that works in.
And then you can just tell me
Yeah,
next?
sure.
Yeah. All right. Let's
Yeah, because that's at least a 10 second lag. That's going to be impossible to talk to. So, yeah.
All right. Okay, so I've got the
We
main
can see it.
screen
Yeah, we can see it.
and I'll jump to
We
the
can see it.
fancy animation one.
All right. So we at the last meeting, or wasn't the last meeting? I think it was the one before that, maybe around the 1st of May or something or other. Maybe it was the 30th of April. We went through scope and usage of a document reference profile for AU Core. We went through the must support elements and obligations. And today we're going to look at search parameters and value set bindings. So if you can go to the next slide. Very briefly, this was what was motioned for the profile scope and usage. It is basically a minimum set of expectations for indexing, storing, discovering, and accessing digital health documents for a subject of care within Australia. Next. These were the must support elements that were agreed. Basically, we've got identifiers where available, status is mandatory, type is mandatory, category is optional, provide one if you know one, subject is mandatory, date, author, must support if you know one, and content is mandatory. And there is a content type. Sorry, there's data or URL provided there, but also content type is, there's an invariant on that in the context of one of those elements. I think it's on data, but I could be wrong. It might be on the other one. So it's kind of mandatory in a conditional manner. content type that is, and then finally context period, which is the time of the service that is being documented. So they were all agreed in the last sessions with our default EU core obligations of populate if known and no error for requesters. Next slide.
Hang on, I have a question about that. That's a document reference. There's nothing obvious there that say the document reference has to be about a service. But down at context period, it says time of service that is being documented, assuming that the only things that you can document are services. Is that reasonable?
No, that's not, because it's optional.
Yeah.
So it doesn't necessarily have to be about a service, but if there is a service, then that's where you can provide the time of the service.
Okay. And if it's not a service, you don't have a way of saying what period it was. Okay. But maybe it doesn't make sense for a non-service to have a period. Okay.
They're default definitions, by the way, Richard. So if you have a concern with the definition, that would be something you could take up with Barcore.
Thank you.
Moving on, we then had an information session the next day on the 1st of May, where we went through search parameters and the value set bindings. The initial set that was proposed was patient and patient plus type as shall, and a should around patient plus author. If you can click next. As part of the session, we also identified some additional requirements around patient plus date, patient plus period, and also the combination of patient type period and patient type date. So this was basically the set of search parameters that was felt was useful for the document reference in Australia. I'd like to, I guess, just get any commentary around this set and if there's any concerns, if there's anything that we are obviously missing, or if we feel that the additional ones that we added during this session are going too far. I guess what I might point out is the difference between date and period. As Richard indicated, the period is actually the clinical date of the service that's associated with the document that's being referenced, whilst the date is actually the date of when the document reference was created. So not even necessarily the date of the document. So as the defined on the right-hand side there. So it's really around when it was being referenced, not anything clinically relevant. But we felt that it was perhaps useful to have that date available as a search parameter, I guess, in the context of what Richard also said was when a period is actually not available or a clinical date is not available. At least then we've got some kind of search criteria that we can do around date. Danielle.
I have two questions. My first one in terms of period, and I believe we've talked about it, but I do not remember for the life of me. In composition, there is that event period. Is that what gets mapped onto the document reference context period? So if we look at like patient summary or like IPS, where it has that event period, that's what you would expect to be like mapping through?
It is, we haven't really looked at mappings, but certainly in my analysis and preparation for this, that is something that I had suggested, yes, and that is backed by a kind of a draft mapping of sorts from Firecore itself.
That's okay. That's just sparked a thought for me as to whether or not we can get through it in this release. We should probably look at doing a formal mapping between composition and document reference at least, and agreeing on that in Australia and taking that maybe through structured docs in international.
I don't think that affects this proposal.
It
personally.
doesn't. It doesn't. I was just more thinking future cool stuff we could do.
Sure.
Um, the second question I have is, do you have a slide available that is like the comparison slide of like what all the other specs do?
Not for these because they don't. No, I haven't got for search parameters. No.
All right, I'll go look for myself.
I think for this too, we did talk about it in our information session as the starter set, right? The sort of base AU core starter set. And we've got there only the shall obligations on patient and patient type. All the others are shoulds. And obviously there may be more that we want to do in the future. But again, that is the starter set.
So just
Okay.
looking at US core, sorry, I can see that there is a shall on patient in US core, a shall on patient and category. There's a shall on patient category and date. There's a shall on patient and type. And then there's some shoulds on patient and status, patient type and period.
Richard?
And then bringing up, sorry, just finishing that comparison in a verbal manner. IPA has shall on patient. It's got should on underscore ID, and then everything else is just may, and it's got some shoulds for. So in terms of combinations, it's also got like should patient category date, should patient type, content type. That's interesting. Should patient status. Patient type date, patient type period are also shoulds in IPA. So I think those that line up with IPA for me, I would strongly agree with.
So are there any from that, Danielle, that you think that we shouldn't be including in this list?
In this list in particular, we are, as far as I can tell, unique in proposing patient author. It's not really a problem because it's a should, but I haven't really seen that anywhere else. So that's interesting.
Richard?
I was having a look at the document reference date and thinking about it and when people might want to use it. It strikes me that when people are searching for document references, they will generally not be interested in the document reference resource, which is a piece of machinery. They'll be more interested in the document that the document reference tells you about. And so that the date is probably not the search that people would like. People would like to search on patient and the date of the document, or the patient and the date the document is about. Now we've got the date the document is about because that's patient but period. But the date of the document we don't actually have. And I don't think that's a problem with us saying that patient plus date is useful, but I think that what people would actually prefer to have when they're using it is patient plus document date. And I don't see an obvious way to give that to anybody.
Can I
But
just
that's
quickly
sort of suggesting that patient plus date might be less useful than people hope it is.
think in the context of where document reference originally starts out is if it's a PDF, there's no way to actually know what the document date is programmatically. Obviously, if we've got structured documents, then we're in a better position. We can do that. But I mean, as per defined, I guess that could always be refined to some extent in a mapping from, say, composition, as Danielle was alluding to, that we could populate that with the document date.
I don't think
But there is unstructured
think
documents where it would be challenging to be able to do anything other than what is stated in the spec, which is when the document reference was created.
Oh, absolutely. Document reference date, we can't use it to carry out another piece of data. It's just that I think that the piece of data that people would like to search on doesn't have an obvious home.
I'm going to say that's only one particular architectural view. If you're doing Autogen on demand, true. But if you're doing things like maybe what Austria is doing with patient summary, which is similar to what we do with the Services Australia data, which is a push model. So every time a new piece of data gets pushed to their national repository, they will then generate a patient summary and they will also generate the document reference by when you can find it. So the date that you could search on then is like the associated date that is actually like the latest piece of information, if you will. So I think that's uh, it's different architectural perspectives of how sharing across an ecosystem would work.
Yep.
Which is why we shouldn't make it shall, because we don't yet have the answer, a nudge here, agency on your record locator service, national infrastructure. But I don't think it's unreasonable that, okay, personally, I like patient type date because rather than just like give me all documents on this date, it would be better to go, I want a discharge summary on this date, but I don't think it's a problem to have a date parameter that's associated with a should combination. Or have I just
So
killed the conversation?
Yeah. I mean, my point wasn't, I wasn't trying to argue against including date, just wanting to point out that date might be less helpful than many people hope for, but there's nothing obvious to use in its place. So it's sort of, um,
Because
that's
can
our
I just
problem,
pose
Richard.
another trickiness?
yeah.
Like when we talk about event period, okay, so I'll again do this in the context of patient summary, mostly because that's all the work we've been doing recently. So all my examples are falling back to that, right? There's a whole bunch of stuff that says your data inclusion things are like 90 days of this, 2 years of that. So then what are you putting in your event period? It's not actually the full like 2 years for every single section because people have made some decisions, and we see that in like MedsView in the My Health record and some of those like conditions view that there's been decisions of different date periods of which data is relevant. And that's so it's quite an interesting thing to try to like search on that.
Mm, yep.
So really, the period is the obvious one, right? And if we think about $.ref, which is not on the table today, but the way that the $.ref operation is defined, the date in that as a parameter of that is a clinically relevant date. In other words, period. The problem is that period is not commonly populated or not reliably populated by many systems. Hence, the only date we've got to fall back on is the date. So, warts and all, that's what we have. Is it useful to put in here? It's probably better than not being able to specify any kind of date range at all. And that's the problem if we don't have it in here,
Yep.
is that we've got no option for a date range at all.
Yeah. I
Um, and as you say, there is nothing that actually carries what you're actually asking for, which is the actual document date. But what's actually most useful is actually the clinical date.
I think I just found the document date. It's in document reference dot content dot attachment dot creation.
Yes, yeah, you're right. But again, there's no parameter for that. I don't
There's no
think.
parameter for that. No, but I guess just what I'm thinking is that what some people would like is to be able to do that, but the machinery doesn't support it out of the box.
And I originally included that in my analysis around things for must support, but didn't end up getting it because, again, of the lack of maturity around the use of that particular element.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Can
So
I
again,
just
this is the
summarize
flaw.
that, Richard, I think you're not asking for us to remove date.
Oh,
You're just saying that there
no,
would be
no.
a more useful date potentially to that maybe we need to look at in the future. But yeah, you're just saying that it's may not be exactly what we need, but you're not proposing that we remove that as a search parameter.
No, I'm not proposing that remove it. I fear that people may expect that it does something different to what it does, and that we as a community ought to be aware of that risk before people start saying, "Hey, but I want to find." And so that was all.
Okay. Thanks, Richard.
So going back to Danielle's comment about author, do we want to remove that from this list?
What's the use case for it? Like what do we get out of it?
I'm looking for referrals that were written by a particular provider. For this page.
Author needs to be included for assessing the clinical value of the data that comes with the package of the Encounter record.
We're talking
But are
about
we going to
search parameters.
search on it though? Are we going to search on it? Am I going to say I want, and so this is I guess a possible case. I want all records from and insert a specialist name.
Or
Like
my
this
documents.
patient, yeah, this specialist.
You do want to do a search. Say, for example, we at the Brisbane meeting, we talk a lot about AI assisted scribes. Some of the AI assisted scribe might not necessarily be validated by a clinical user. All right. So therefore, you might want to do a search and exclude AI assisted scribes. So I think that's a useful parameter to use.
How much do we want to use author for searching, and how much do we want to use it for filtering and sorting after we've done the search?
Danielle, what's your concern about keeping it as a should? Are you
I don't have
thinking
one
there's
at
too
this
much
stage. We're pre-ballet.
implementation?
We haven't tested it yet. We can come back to it. It stands out as being the thing that I have never seen in any other spec for DocRef.
Yeah.
Like any other international or jurisdictional specification does not have patient plus author. If we have a use case for it, that totally makes sense. I'm not sure that I've really heard the need that people actually want to be searching by that combination.
I'm concerned that the list is getting long when we have all of these. So I'm also going back to your other comment around that type plus period and type plus date are useful. Should we remove all of those, the three in the middle?
Look, I'm still on the topic. I mean, notwithstanding the fact that the list is getting long, but I'm still on the topic of the author. And I still recall back in the days or back in the NITA days when we were talking about the authors and also the role, the professional role of the author. And it was being very significantly pointed out to us that if you look at a MyHealth record clinical data, clinical document, you want to know who actually authored the document. So therefore, you can judge sort of the level of clinical trust that you want to pay on, that you want to put in on the document. So I think my use case or my argument is that it has a good utility. If we want to exclude it, I am not going to jump up and down about it, but I do want to make an important clinical use case where we have been told by our clinical stakeholders that that is an important concept or data point.
But this is about search parameters. When
Yeah.
we've already agreed on the must supports, it is a must support. Now we're talking about what are we going to search by? What are the mandatory and recommended search parameters that a server and client should
if I
use?
understand
My
that,
health record doesn't do this. They even with there's a number of search parameters that you can use in the My Health record currently to find information, and they don't offer author.
Look, I understand that or the hesitance of that. Before the Brisbane meeting, I probably wouldn't even talk about it. But at the Brisbane meeting, there were so much discussion on AI assisted scribes, and some of the AI assisted scribes might not necessarily be clinically scrutinized. So I think that's something that is important when you want to consider doing a search.
Danielle, do you still have your hand up?
I guess I do. I was on the fence, and now I think I've fallen on one side. I think we should take out patient plus author for now. If this actually comes out and people want it and can provide a use case on how to do it, like what are they looking for, I think then we add it in rather than putting it as a should immediately when, maybe we open this up to the group. Is anyone on the group actually searching by patient plus author? Because the AU Core is a set of minimum agreements, not like let's do incredibly forward-thinking stuff. We always try to be fancy, but within the remit in which we're working, like, is that actually what people are doing now or what people want? I guess, okay, so Mandy
Got
and
some
then
hands up.
Randy.
Yeah. Mandy?
Hi everyone. I'm so sorry. I've got a bad case of a flu. There are lots of talks of professionals using Scribe and other AI to do their documentation. But however, there are glitches in this. So it's a foreseeing situation. I think having date and author would help. If there is some glitches, then it can be rectified quite easy instead of searching the whole documents on the dates and but the dates are also good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think I'll probably just quickly respond there to you, Mandy. I don't think we put the context of search parameters as well as we should have. I think there's searching within a particular record, and I don't think there's any disagreement that we need to know who the author is. I think that's really quite clear. What we're thinking about are things across an ecosystem. If I am maybe a GP and I want to find out some clinical records related to my patient and I don't know the answer yet, which kind of things am I using to discover the right information? Will I have the very particular author who authored something? Is that what I'm actually searching on, plus by patient? Or am I more doing I would like to find the discharge summary for my patient within like the last 6 months. That's kind of the thing we're looking for. And then that will like go off and hopefully federate across a whole set of distributed networks, including the My Health Record, and come back and provide to that clinician that information that falls within that. And I think we're really just questioning whether or not anyone is actually trying to search on that patient and a specific author.
I hear you. I hear you. Yep, I think you have got a good point, but I do think that people may be searching by author from what I hear from colleagues as well, but it's not there. So it's not a standard key to use or a search model in other, and there is no standardization. So it comes back to what would be more feasible for this project to go ahead. Can you add it, or is it going to be kind of causing complications? I think maybe should think about that part as well.
I mean, if you search without author, you get back more things, and then you can then filter down or filter down locally. So part of the work in terms of looking at, okay, which are the ones that came from this author is how much work do you want the server to do with it as a search parameter, and how much will you do locally after you've collected your extra records?
Exactly. And if you're short on time, you don't want to go through 2,000 documents. You want to narrow it down. So having that option available can help.
Yeah.
Can help time.
Oh yeah, but doing it locally doesn't have to be done by the human scrolling through the list. Doing it locally can be done by having a good quality client, which will let you do that filtering.
True, true.
R-
In such platforms, the more you have options to narrow or expand, it is more valuable. But then again, I don't know much, so I'm also learning. So thank you for giving me the chance to to say.
So I might hear from Brendan, and then I will put forward a couple of other issues, and then we'll come back. Brendan?
I think the author will be relevant even in the AI scribe use case. So the way my understanding is that how they work is that you have to have a data repository outside of your main health record system where the draft is created, and it's only written back once the actual clinician approves that to be written into the health record. So it's actually the clinician is the author, and they have approved what's been written as being a correct and truthful account of what's been stated. So I think the author field is going to be useful from that perspective because it is going to be in the clinician's name generally, is the way that they tend to work. Certainly the ones in the major EMRs that I've looked at do.
Okay. I'm kind of looking at what we've got in US Core and IPA, and I'm feeling like we should be dropping out the three in the middle, as in the patient plus author, patient plus date, patient plus period, and just leave the two shalls and the two shoulds at the bottom. So I would like to raise a motion to do that, basically, to the two shalls and the two shoulds at the bottom, and see if we can push this forward. And if anyone would like to bring back the author one, I'm happy to consider the motion if you feel strongly about including author.
Thanks, Brendan. Is your hand still up as an old hand or a new hand?
Heath, I've said my
Zelda.
case, but if you're looking for someone who wants to make a friendly amendment to bring back author, I would be the one.
So Heath has made a motion that we have patient and patient plus type as shall, with patient plus type plus period as a should, and patient plus type plus date as a should. So that was the original motion. Stephen, are you suggesting a friendly amendment to that?
Yeah, well, for that to be included as a search parameter, if I on the list exclude sort of by author as in the search parameter as we previously discussed.
So you would like.
I prefer that can we do two motions? Can we do the minimum that Heath has laid out and then treat patient plus author as a second one?
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to reject the friendly amendment because I just want to go for a floor, and that aligns with the international IGs that we've talked about.
Well, the reason why I spoke was that I thought I heard you say that does anyone wants to bring it back?
I acknowledge that.
Okay.
Yep.
Changed my mind.
I think that's a good approach. We can go. We'll do an initial vote for these ones if we get a second. Then we'll open to any other motions if people would like to motion additional search parameters. So we can do that in two or multiple votes, as many as we need. So for Heath's motion, it's on patient shall, patient plus type shall, and patient plus type plus period should, and patient plus type plus date as a should. So only those four. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll second Michael Stefan.
Okay. Thanks, Steph. We've got a second on that. Is there any other questions or comments on that before I launch a vote on those four? No more comments. I will launch a poll. Hopefully you can see that. So for those 4 parameters as our initial. And we've got about 60% participated, so if we can get some more votes in, that'd be good. If you're unsure, you can abstain.
While people are doing that, I would like to raise because
Danielle, sorry, can we just finish? Can we just finish the vote first, please?
yeah, of course we can.
All right, we're getting close to, yep, we've got over 80% now. So I'll end that in 3, 2, 1. So we'll end that poll, and we have 13 plus 1 in the chat, 14 affirmative. We have 0 negative, and we have 5 abstain. So that motion has passed. Sorry, Danielle, happy for you to talk. Yeah.
No, actually, I think it's probably better to throw to maybe Stephen Chu on whether or not he's putting forward the proposal for patient plus author.
Yeah, look,
Yeah,
if
I'm happy
are,
now. So if anyone else has additional,
yeah, if we are entertaining a motion for additional data element, I would put forward a motion about including the patient in that list as well. Sorry, author in
sorry,
that list as well.
so is that as it is on the screen, the patient plus author as the should search parameter?
Right.
Yes. Okay. Is there anyone interested in seconding that motion? Is that Brendan? Was that
Good.
a
Yeah,
second?
that was me.
Yep. Okay, that's great. Any additional comments on that one before I launch a poll for that? No. Okay, I will launch a poll. So this poll is to add patient plus author as a should search parameter. Yeah, we've got about 70% participated, so if we can get a few more votes in, that would be good. Okay, that's getting close. I'll end that in 3, 2, 1. End that poll. So we have 9 affirmative, we have 2 negative, and we have 8 plus 1 in the chat, so 9 abstain. So that motion has passed. I assume the negatives, is that anyone?
Yeah,
Is
I'm
that
happy to
the
speak
usual
to it.
suspects?
For the record in the minutes, no system does this now. I don't think it meets AU core inclusion criteria. Like this is not a thing that happens now. How we search by author across an ecosystem, that's something that needs to be defined. It needs national infrastructure. I don't think we're there yet. So I don't think we're at the position that is appropriate for a should. That's my position.
Yep, thanks, Dale. I think that's fair too. Like we've put this in now. This will go through ballot as part of R3. So part of ballot, people can suggest we need additional, or that we've got too many and we need to remove them. So all of this will go through ballot. So there is an opportunity to provide further feedback on the spec when we get to that. Show our R3 ballot. So we've got about 9 minutes left. Heath, I think you had another slide. Sorry, Brett, did you still have?
Oh, can I just make a quick query? Are we going to talk about patient chaining support at all?
I don't think we were going to at the moment, were we? No. That's
Okay, so we're not going to do the same thing we've done for other resource types.
Okay, let's add that onto the next agenda where
Thank
we
you.
just confirm that how we treat the patient parameter is going to be the same here. Is that kind of what you're going for, Brett?
Exactly. So
All
yeah,
right, cool.
we have some stuff about identifier chaining and
Or
so
do we even need to talk about that? I mean, it's a standard thing. I think the
but we
question
have it in the spec.
probably,
We have conformance in the spec on those
yeah,
things.
and I just think
Yeah.
that we just do common stuff personally. Like, why would
Yeah.
document reference be any different?
Why is it different than the other resource types? That's other profiles.
That's my point.
Okay,
So
so the question then is, in principle, do we need a motion, or are we expecting that when we say patient as a search parameter, it is the same definition of patient as it is across all the other resources, which does have some extra things, but it's always the same in AU Core.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we happy to accept that it's like the default AU Core, or do we want a motion in specific on it?
I will do this by exception, I think. So does anyone have concerns that the patient search parameter is different to anything else implemented in AU Core? So are there any concerns about that we need to discuss this further, or are we just accepting it as the standard search parameter we have in AU Core? So I think if anyone would like to raise their hand or speak up if they think it is different or we need to discuss further.
Can you just clarify, did you say it's the same, it's not different?
I'm just going to.
I'm asking for anyone if thinks it is not the same. So if anyone is thinking that we need to discuss it further and determine exactly what it is, otherwise by default it would be the standard search parameter for patient that we have implemented in the rest of AU Core.
I've just pasted something in the chat around what the current statements are. I'm more concerned about author.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have just voted to put that in.
We have
So
no idea how to do it.
I was the other negative vote, so good luck. No, yeah, I don't know author if we need to consider this stuff. It's like
okay, well we can bring back to another meeting
Yeah, we can bring it back.
discuss author further, but it has been voted in, so it is in there at the moment. And if we need further clarification, we can bring that to a future meeting. Heath, you got 5 minutes?
I don't think we're going to make it. I mean, I can socialize it, but I don't think we'll get to a motion. So, I guess in short, basically we're looking at putting a binding on the type element. The binding at the moment is to a value set of LOINC codes that is a list of 6,400 terms. Next. The set of types that we currently use within HL7 AU IGs is a patient summary code, and we also have a clinical note code that's used in the AU requesting. Next. I think that's the wrong slide. Next. So the proposal is to create a new AU document type codes value set for the type element. It will initially include the set of codes included in the previously proposed AU FIRE document types codes value set for composition, which includes that patient summary code and an additional code for clinical note. Next. And additional values can be added when they're required. Next. Either directly or through the FIRE document type codes. Next. So basically we would add an additional bindings to the type element with using this existing AU sorry, the proposed AU document type codes value set of candidate. So basically, I'm talking about creating a value set as a new value set, which is a placeholder that will have two codes in it for clinical note and patient summary, and we can add them over as we need. Brett.
Yeah, so just checking the AU fire document types code set is really only for where we have structured document definitions.
When they're used for a composition type.
Yeah, cool. Excellent. That's good. Thank you.
So anything that's of composition type will be added to that file document types, and then that will automatically be inherited into this AU document types codes value set. And we can add things like clinical note when it isn't a file document.
Okay. We're at 2 minutes. We've got the opportunity to make a motion now, or we can carry this over if we think we need to discuss it further.
We'll need
I'll
to carry it
motion.
over. No, I've got major questions
Okay.
on this.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll move that over to the agenda, given we can't discuss anything in 2 minutes. And that probably ties into what we've got coming up. So we have on Friday this week, we've got the part 2 of our medication dispense information session. And what we're looking at doing is having further discussions on medication dispense then, so we can bring it into the AU core work group, which is back to our regular schedule next Thursday on the 11th of June. So we'll look at medication dispense there. We will carry over this document reference into discussion into that call as well, to carry that over. And I think Danielle's got some stuff on address to cover off in there if we've got time. But this is really our last 2 meetings for changes for R3. So we are Heath is looking at taking us through an information session on bundle to go with composition. So we've already done composition, looking at bundle to go with that. We're proposing an information session on the 19th of June, which is Friday, the 19th of June at 11 a.m. So hopefully, I haven't sent out the invites for that. Just wanted to make sure that that was an okay time. If we have, I've seen Danielle saying we postpone the address to the one after, which I think is fine.
I meant like following release.
Following release.
Yeah, because I mean, if we've still got things to work through around terminology with document reference and so forth, those are from the voting and the things that we got from the community, like address, yes, there's interest, but it's much lower priority than these things. So I think we can afford to postpone it entirely if we have to.
Okay. Well, we'll keep it there as of something we may want. But yes, we'll look at timing, given we've got that other meeting. But yes, so I'll send out an invite for the information session on bundle, and then we can bring that to the 25th of June meeting as well. We are out of time, but if anyone has anything they're aware of now that they think they would like addressed in R3 that we need to squeeze into one of these meetings, please let us know now. Otherwise, you can contact a co-chair, myself or one of the other co-chairs, to look at getting something on the agenda for one of these meetings. Danielle?
Yes, my eternal hand up. Admin, and we can do that pretty quickly later on. As we've moved into a work group instead of a TDG, I just want to reaffirm the principles for inclusion in AU Core because it uses the TDG language. So I think we can just swap it out and just get that affirmed by the group. So it's more of an admin thing that I'd like to get on an agenda.
Sure.
Does that have to be done in the next couple of meetings, or is
It
that
doesn't
part
have to
of the
be in the
next
next
iteration?
2. I think it would be good to be done before we finish ballot reconciliation.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Yeah, if you've got anything you want to get on an agenda, please reach out to myself or one of the other co-chairs, so we can look at getting that on. But otherwise, we will see you again next Thursday. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Michael.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you. Bye.